it's Bonnie Southgate, hEDS Rehab. Welcome to my YouTube channel. We are taking you through the basics of Pilates exercises. For those of you who do take Pilates classes, you might find these interesting and useful. And for those who want to do Pilates, then this is a really great way for you to start. So today we are looking at a basic exercise called a bridge, and you'll find people doing bridges at the gym and bridges in Pilates classes. And I'm going to talk you through ways of doing bridges. You might see them done different ways. I'm always sort of in between. I don't say right or wrong, but I'll give you the reasons again for why one person might do one thing and another person might do another. So we are going to start lying on your back. And we will start your bridges. So generally speaking, when people start their bridges, they have their feet what we call hip width apart. So your heel bones want to be in line with those little bones that you sit on, and that would bring you into a nice sort of position with your knees in line with your hips. So you may find with many teachers, they put a ball in between your knee. And a lot of them do that just to give you either an awareness of where you are in space. Some people will ask you to squeeze the ball. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, because a lot of hypermobiles are weak in their adductors, but it does make doing the bridge harder. So it's up to you. There are different emphasis that you can put on bridges. So we're going to start with nothing at all today, and then we'll talk about the benefits of the ball between the knees and the band around the knees, which will be two different ways of doing this exercise. So one of the first things to think about is, what are you doing in a bridge? So it's a nice exercise where you can mobilize the spine. So you start to move through the spine on your way up, and then once you get into that bridge position, you are working your legs. So primarily we are working the legs. Some people may take those hips really super high, which Pilates himself did do, and you might find you do in a classical Pilates class, which then takes the whole of the spine into activity. So you are then working the spinal extensors. So to begin with, we need to be able to do a little pelvic tilt where we flatten the back. And the little pelvic tilt in itself can be problematic for some people. So I want you to place your hands on top of your hip bones, and we are just going to think about rocking those hip bones towards the floor. So the pubic bone is coming towards your nose or your belt buckle. So you're losing the curve of your lower back when you do this, and then relax back down. Now, there are different trains of thought when you do this movement. For me, the focus is on not gripping the abdominals. So I can pull I've got my six-pack muscle, and my six-pack muscle flexes my spine. So I might use my six-pack to take me there, but what that's going to do is that's going to alter your rib cage, and it's going to pull your shoulders forward, and it might put strain on the back of your neck. So that's not the strategy that I would advocate for doing a pelvic tilt going into a bridge. Your upper half does not need to get involved. You can move your lumbar spine just fine, and as you roll slightly up, so I can take that pelvic tilt without gripping my ribs down to help me, by maybe putting a little bit more weight in the feet, but by also not gripping the ribs, which is something that as people with hypermobility we tend to do, and those who've got rib issues and slipping rib, it's really important that you don't get really overly grippy in them. So I want you to take your hands on your ribs now, and you're going to think about a pelvic tilt where you don't let the ribs squeeze together or down, and you don't let them go too wide either. So you're really allowing the ribs to stay fairly still as you rock that pelvis flat. Now, I want you to also think about when you rock the pelvis flat. I can have my hands on the two bones here. My right side, I can feel, comes down quicker than my left. and that means that my pelvic is rotating into a posterior tilt easier or quicker on the right than the left, because we talked about having two sides of the pelvis. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to place more weight through my left leg, which is the slower side, and that is going to help my pelvis rock evenly. And what that will do is take a rotation out of my pelvis and out of my spine. So I'm taking the twist and I'm taking the pressure off any asymmetry I might have in my lumbar spine. So if you are somebody who's got like a bit of a disky issue on one side, it often can be that rotation that predisposes you. You may find it's very comfortable if you do that this way. So little pelvic tilt. Now I've learned how to pelvic tilt. I'm going to start to peel my tailbone off, and I'm going to start to roll into my bridge. And my aim is that I'm in a nice straight line from my knees all the way to my shoulders, and I'm not lifting with my thoracics or my ribs, because that means I'm not using my legs. I'm going to bring them back down. So everything, I'm not squeezed and I'm not lifted. It's all in a normal place. And I want you to think about your feet now. So the feet don't want to be rolled in. So if you are somebody who's hypermobile and you tend to let your feet roll in, I need you to think about your feet at the moment. I'm just going to come sitting. So the feet are super important in how things behave up the chain. So if the foot rolls in, it takes your lower leg bone and your thigh bone in, and that makes it much harder to go into your bridge. And if you do, when you start to come up, when you flatten your back, your legs start to externally rotate a little bit. That's where they gather the muscles under your bottom that help you to come up. That comes with external rotation. So if you're going into a bridge and your foot is rolled in, you may get torsion at the knee and it might be uncomfortable. So we need to think that you do keep the weight through your big toe, but you also let the ankle bone roll slightly out. So your heel bone is actually slightly to the side of the foot. Your heel bone lines up with your fourth and your fifth toe. Funny enough, it's not in the center. So you want to make sure that the heel is, you're on the heel bone in line with the fourth and the fifth toe, but you also keep that big toe down as you go into that bridge position. So we'll start again thinking about the feet before we roll through the spine. And I want you to think base of the big toe is always on the floor. It should never come off the floor in your exercises or in correcting your feet. And then you can just hold your thighs still, and then you're going to slightly roll your heels out, not too crazy, because we don't want to over roll those ankles out if you've got bags of mobility, but just so that you can sense weight through the slight, what we call lateral side of the foot. Then you're going to go into that pelvic tilt again. If you needed to put weight through one leg more than the other, then do. And keeping those feet nice and stable, you're going to start to roll up through the spine. You might sway a little as you do. You're going to come into that bridge position. You might feel like you've got something going on in the tops of the thighs. That would be them at length. So that's a stretch, because you're stretching from the knee and the hip end. So it may feel like you're using them, but it should be more a sense of length. And I want you to be aware again on your feet that you don't have all the weight in your heel or all the weight in your forefoot, but you've got it placed in the front and the back of the foot. And then you're going to start to roll back down again. You're not going to squeeze those ribs. You're going to allow the spine to move. Keep weight through that foot if you need it to. You're going to keep tucking the tailbone under. And you're going to roll all the way back down into that neutral spine. Now, you can use a ball in between your knees if you want it there, just to keep your thighs in line. But if you feel that it's difficult to roll through the spine and to roll through your back, then I would highly recommend a band around the knees. So I'll get a band. And you can push out, and that will help you move your lumbar spine into flexion. So the movements of the hips greatly influence the movements. I've got this tied from before, so I'm just going to pop it around. the influence of the legs influence the pelvis. So if the muscles that take my knees open also help to connect to flatten your back. So you might find that you're already gripped there and you don't necessarily need to do this. A lot of people with hypermobility tend to be a bit weak there and they tend to be dominant in the front. Now, if you take your knees slightly open, you might recruit these muscles that you're dominant in. So if you're going to take the knees open, you need to take them wide enough that you start to transfer the weight into more around here or back further. So you're going to take those knees open and you'll feel that your back flattens much easier when you do that, and you can roll up into that bridge. So if mobility of the lumbar spine is what you want to work on and you want it to feel less strained, then the band around the knee is a great way to do it. And we often are really weak in those muscles. If we have weak hips or subluxing hips, we tend to be more internally rotated. So my emphasis or my recommendation for people with hip issues and hypermobility is to take that band around the knee and push open. But you can do the other. It's not wrong. It's just another way of approaching your bridge. Doing both is always a great idea so that you're working all those muscles. So that is your basic Pilates bridge. I hope you found that useful. Try the different ways. Do what feels best on your body, because we're all individual and we all have individual needs. So it's Body Southgate hEDS Rehab. I hope you've found this useful. Subscribe. I've got lots of videos on lots of different exercises and some classes as well. Free for everybody to use, so hopefully you will use them and find them useful. And I hope you have a great day.